Today, for the first time, Robert Mueller has actually spoken publicly about his investigation and about the Mueller report. He did not speak for very long, that's true, but he did speak, and he touched on a number of different aspects of the report that some people didn't read. I would say the vast majority of the country, it's fair to say, did not read, and most of the rest of the country has forgotten since it came out. But he touched on a couple important points in terms of conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and all of that. But we start off with conspiracy.
The first volume of the report details numerous efforts emanating from Russia to influence the election. This volume includes a discussion of the Trump campaign's response to this activity, as well as our conclusion that there was insufficient evidence to charge a broader conspiracy.
Just briefly before we jump into the substantive analysis, I do want to just recognize he is speaking for the first time, which we were not expecting. Yesterday on the show, we asked him to. No big deal.
Yeah, I'm not saying we moved Mueller to do that, but I mean, look, we
made a big deal out of it.
Yeah, and then we said we questioned his patriotism because he was putting his pride of like, hey, I don't want to be involved in politics because it would offend my sensibilities, over being truthful to the American public and making it clear. Did we actually move him to? Yeah, no, we didn't. Okay, anyway, but we gave it our best shot, and there he is today. All right, now on to the substance. So. At least I can go home to my dad, by the way. My dad kept saying, why you don't get Robert Mueller to speak right away? Dad, mission accomplished. Okay, okay, so anyways, now on to the substance. This is very important because on two grounds. One, if you thought that he had colluded during the election, here is Bob Mueller saying very clearly insufficient evidence. That doesn't mean that he didn't do it, but it means they wouldn't have tried him. They wouldn't not only have convicted him, they would not have even brought charges against him. So if you were in that camp, I think that you feel pretty vindicated about insufficient evidence on what is really what we've all called collusion during the election, okay? Now that is going to be an important juxtaposition to what he says next.
It's pretty much what you expected, right? If you had read even parts of it, or well, what wasn't redacted, or anyone actually reporting on the actual report, you would know that what Mueller's saying is sort of what we already knew. I think the people who are acting surprised are people who were paying attention to reporting on what people were saying about the report instead of actually listening to what we knew about it.
Or some of them might be a little bit confused because they paid attention to Barr's memo about the report.
Of course.
And just trusted that whatever he put in there would be true. Turned out to not be the case. But nothing there about the conspiracy was anything that we didn't know. He turns in this next clip to obstruction of justice. And here he does reveal something pretty significant that it would have been amazing to know far earlier. We're gonna touch base on that in just a sec, but here he is talking about obstruction of justice.
The order appointing me special counsel authorized us to investigate actions that could obstruct the investigation. We conducted that investigation and we kept the office of the acting attorney general apprised of the progress of our work. And as set forth in the report, after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. We did not, however, make a determination as to whether the president did commit a crime. The introduction to the volume 2 of our report explains that decision. It explains that under long-standing department policy, a president cannot be charged with a federal crime while he is in office. That is unconstitutional. Even if the charge is kept under seal and hidden from public view, that too is prohibited. The special counsel's office is part of the Department of Justice, and by regulation, it was bound by that department policy. Charging the president with a crime was therefore not an option we could consider.
You could have considered saying that a year and a half ago, I think. It seems, I mean, there'd been debate along the way about how seriously he would take that memo. There, he referred to the content of the memo or the decision as determining constitutionality. There, he's taking it so seriously that he's saying it would be unconstitutional to levy charges against the president, which I don't believe that the constitutionality of that has ever been tested. I wouldn't necessarily want this Supreme Court to do it. But there were never going to be charges. There could never have been charges. Why was that not stated a year ago publicly?
Yeah, so I want to touch on that too, but I don't want to lose track of the money quote here. He said in that clip that you just watched, If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. Now, so he's saying on the collusion and what he calls conspiracy, because that's the legal word for it, insufficient evidence. On obstruction, if we had insufficient evidence, I would tell you. What does that mean? That means he has sufficient evidence. So why is he not charging him if he has sufficient evidence? One is what John just referred to, which is that he thinks he's not allowed to charge a sitting president. Okay, we're gonna get to the implication of that in a second. The second reason is he says, even if I thought that he should be charged if he weren't the sitting president, I couldn't tell you that because that would bias people against the president who would not get a chance to necessarily defend himself in court because we can't charge him. Now, if you're following along logically, that's very clear, completely easy to understand, especially if you're a lawyer. He's saying, yeah, he definitely did it. I'm just not legally allowed to charge him. I'll tell you who is in a second, right? But unfortunately, not everybody's a lawyer, and not everybody clearly understands that. And it allows for the Republicans and Donald Trump to obfuscate. So he says, I'm not charging him on this. On this one, I'm not saying anything because I'm not allowed to say anything, but here's 11 instances of him obstructing justice. So the Trump people come out and go, see, case closed. Literally, that's what Trump said. Case closed, obviously didn't do it. No! And to John's point about framing, why didn't we have a discussion throughout that Mueller was never going to charge Trump? The question was, and that since he thinks that Department of Justice cannot charge Trump, what is the only body that actually can bring Trump or any president to justice if they break the law? Congress. So the entire time that Mueller was deliberating, we should have been having a conversation about, will Mueller give enough evidence for Congress to impeach Donald Trump? So now in the Mueller report, and we told you this when it came out, it says the correct next government body to act is Congress. So now we'll get to Pelosi and how she punted and she won't do her job and a total dereliction of duty. But here, I want the audience to be at least crystal clear. This is basically Mueller coming out and saying what Rashida Tlaib said, impeach the mother, okay? He's saying, it's not my job, it's Congress's job. And I just told you broke the law 11 times on obstruction of charges, obstruction of justice. If you're paying attention, crystal clear. If you're trying to confuse the issue, then then he gave you plenty of room to go, well, hey, he didn't say he's charging him, ha ha. So what's your take on it, Aya?
I mean, so this is sort of the problem with a lot of politics right now, and the why so many people get frustrated with them. Because as you said, a lawyer hearing that would say, oh, okay, I totally get this. But for most people listening at home, they have been hearing about the Mueller report for like ever. And you're like, this is going to be the report that says whether or not the president committed a crime, we're gonna find out the truth. What is actually happening is the fact that no one seems to want to deal with the fact, even the media wants to deal with the fact that Republicans know that most people want to still play with a level playing field when it comes to politics. And so with Mueller just doing his job, Barr and other people, everyone who's sort of in Trump's land can come out and they can spin it to, so there's no collusion, and part of it too was just, I feel like framing so much of this as, are we finding out about collusion? Because I feel like one of the largest parts about this is the obstruction of justice, and that's what we should really be going after for impeachment.
We're not going to go through all of the instances of obstruction of justice, which are very clear in the Mueller report, and you should have already read it at this point. But again, there's no definition of obstruction of justice that means anything that he hasn't violated at this point. Like if he is allowed to get away with the things that he got away with and it does not count as obstruction of justice, there can never be an investigation of a president that's meaningful in the future because they can just fire everyone involved with it. They can not testify themselves. They can tamper with witnesses, threaten witnesses, dangle pardons in front of witnesses. All of the stereotypical, most obvious instances of obstruction of justice. He did that. That is why we got to this point where Robert Mueller is winking and nodding at the fact that Congress needs to step in. But he does, in his remarks, go a little bit more into the DOJ policy on charging and which body would actually pursue the next step in this clip.
First, the opinion explicitly permits the investigation of a sitting president, because it is important to preserve evidence while memories are fresh and documents available. Among other things, that evidence could be used if there were co-conspirators who could be charged now. And second, the opinion says that the Constitution requires a process other than the criminal justice system to formally accuse a sitting president of wrongdoing. And beyond department policy, we were guided by principles of fairness. It would be unfair to potentially accuse somebody of a crime when there can be no court resolution of the actual charge.
So he's obviously saying there, he did it. I'm not allowed to charge him, and I think it'd be unfair to say he did it without charging him because he wouldn't be able to defend himself. But that's obvious to anyone who's logical and paying attention. But so what he's not being fair to is the American people. The American people thought he was gonna come out and say, did he do it or didn't he do it, as Ira pointed out earlier, right? And Mueller says, well, look, I wanna preserve my reputation, and I don't want to be attacked by Democrats or Republicans. So I'll do this punting thing where I'll say, look, I gave you 11 cases where he clearly violated the law, and so it's up to you now, and I'm not going to interpret it for you. Well, I wish the American people were that sufficiently logical and understood exactly what's happening. If you watch the Young Turks, you do. If you saw it there and you see the explanation, it's clear as day. But one of the things that is true of American media today, that apparently Mueller does not understand enough or doesn't care about is, I was talking to another reporter today, and I said, well, obviously he said clearly he implied that he did it. He said, well, you can't say that. You can't say that. No, but wait a minute, you're being unfair to the truth. The truth is he laid out 11 instances where he obstructed justice and says, I can't charge him for it, and I'm not gonna tell you whether somebody should act on it, but I'm telling you that when I find insufficient evidence, I tell you. And here, I'm not telling you that. God damn it, it's so clear, except the way that Mueller stated it doesn't allow the neutral reporters who are not attached to reality and facts to go, hey man, nothing I can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. Which then the bad guys like Trump, et cetera, jump in and go, I'm cleared.
Yeah. When
he's actually saying the exact opposite.
You know what, it reminds me a lot of recently, we had that whole Jussie Smollett thing in Chicago, right? And a lot of the reason why the special prosecutor in Chicago dropped those charges was just because it would have been hard to prove that case in the public opinion after you basically had Rahm Emanuel and like the head of the police in Chicago going on news programs and basically saying he's guilty, without providing any sort of evidence, And I think that's basically where Mueller is now. You can't legally sort of taint, public opinion. Otherwise it's gonna turn back against you.
Yeah. So I hear you on that. That's I think what he's referring to when he says it wouldn't be fair, right? On the other hand, it's also not fair to leave the issue in any way unclear. We had you work on it for 2 years so you can clear it up, not so you can make it less clear. And so, look, again, no honest person that actually understands the issues would come away from that thinking that he was cleared on obstruction. They would think the exact opposite. And no one, if anyone says that he's exonerated on obstruction, that's a clear lie. Flat out lie, and there's no dispute about that.
And just a couple last points to make of this. One, another reason that it's convenient that he is speaking today, and we just had our conversation yesterday, is that we went into whether that Office of Legal Counsel guideline was directing Mueller, and we speculated that it was pretty clear from the Mueller report that Barr's statements that it had nothing to do with it were a lie, that we now knew that. And today, I mean, you saw the videos, that was borne out today, that Barr had been lying about the fact that he was saying, no, the Office of Legal Counsel guideline has nothing to do with it. Even if that wasn't there, Mueller still would not have pressed any charges against Donald Trump. And this again, I mean, this is like the 7th time he's been proven to be a liar on the subject, but the people who came out immediately after the Barr memo came out and decided, I'm gonna tie my reputation to that guy's reputation and imply that anyone that besmirches him is clearly crazy because of his amazing reputation in Washington, just looks more and more ridiculous as the days go by.
I'm referring to William Barr.
But in terms of where Mueller goes from here, he's going from here, actually. He's resigned from the Justice Department. And in terms of him like testifying, whether publicly or privately, what can you expect from that? Well, he said, I hope and expect this to be the only time that I will speak about this matter. I am making that decision myself. No one has told me whether I can or should testify or speak further about this matter. And he also says that even if he does testify, he will not go beyond anything that is revealed in the Mueller report. So from the point of view of Robert Mueller, while there might still be value to him speaking, it will not be in terms of revealing new information to us.
Okay, I mean, first of all, he doesn't get to decide that. If the House subpoenas you, you must comply with the subpoena. So that's a sad day for you that you'd rather be fishing and again, preserving your precious reputation according to your interpretation, right? But if you get a legal subpoena, you're a lawyer, you figure it out. You have to respond to it.
Not if you're Hope Hicks.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Mueller is not in
the question.
Yeah, Mueller's not part of the Trump team. So he, if he says, "Oh, Trump told me not to do it," I mean, then you lose all respect for him. And I'm not. Look, there's nothing wrong with his investigation. And his conclusion is clearly that the president did obstruction of justice, which is a very serious felony. It's just the only issues are with the framing. If he allowed for questions, which he didn't, perhaps the most relevant question would have been what he said in the report, but he'd like to have it be clarified in that press conference that everybody was paying attention to. So if the Department of Justice cannot act and a president has committed a crime, who should act? And there's a very clear answer to that, Congress. Because you can't say nobody can act. What if the president came out on Fifth Avenue and shot someone and killed him and said, haha, I'm a president. The Department of Justice cannot indict a sitting president. Mueller just told you it's unconstitutional. So I get to, you know what? Somebody else step up. I'm gonna kill the next guy because I'm totally above the law. Well, Mueller would say if you asked him about that, well, no, there is someone who could act. Who is it? Congress. So, which then leads to Nancy Pelosi. We'll talk more about it later in the program, but I'll tell you right now, when Nancy Pelosi says she's not going to act, she's saying, I'm putting politics over rule of law, over principle, and I'm gonna let him slide. I'm gonna let the criminal go. And so at this point, Mueller has made it crystal clear. Next stop, Nancy Pelosi. Ball's in our court, and today, one more time, she said, no, I won't do it. And so the resistance has totally turned into the assistance.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.